When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. It's difficult to talk about a drinks party without thinking about this week's news reports. We've heard various stories of parties taking place during national lockdowns and contravention of the rules which we ordinary people have to follow. I've been thinking about what it is that underlies the anger being expressed. It's not just the hypocrisy of it or that their carelessness may have contributed to illnesses and deaths. It seems to me that people are most upset because they were not afforded the luxury of breaking the rules, even in moments of real, genuine crisis. I've seen again and again on social media that photo of the Queen sitting alone at her husband's funeral. I've seen again and again the stories of those who could not be at the bedsides of those they loved in their final days and hours, whose hearts are broken all over again to think that those same rules that kept them away were being broken for the sake of drinks with colleagues. That is the real root of our pain. Power and privilege are at play here. The exceptions that government staff made for themselves were only possible because no one else could share in them. They were safe to break the rules precisely because everybody else had to follow them, or else they would have been undermining their own plans. The kind of power being exercised here is one which indulges in selfish behaviour in the belief that no one will find out. It is the exact opposite of the Bible's call to do what is right, even when no one will acknowledge you for it. The gospel reading we've heard this morning is a rather good example of this entirely opposite use of power. So let me remind you of where we have reached on our journey through Epiphany season. Last week, we heard about the baptism of Christ, in which God reveals Jesus as his beloved Son. And this week, it is Jesus' turn to claim that role for himself, to reveal his glory in the first of his miraculous signs, turning water into wine. Jesus is a guest at a wedding, a remarkably ordinary setting for this first of his miracles. We know the story so well. The wine running out and Jesus' mother demanding that he fix it, ignoring his protestations and instructing the servants to do as he tells them. So Jesus rolls up his sleeves and he follows the servants away from the party. And when they've filled up the water jars, he sends them on to the chief steward, their contents now the best of wine, whilst he slips back to the party. And in doing this, we are told, Jesus reveals his glory. Our gospel says, Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. I find this quite extraordinary, principally because of how unextraordinary it is. No voice from heaven, no opening of the heavens and descent of the Spirit, not even an announcement in front of the gathered guests. Jesus reveals his glory not in a grand self-magnifying gesture, but in an act of service, in rolling up his sleeves and heading to the kitchen and pitching in. Even when no one of influence, not the chief steward, not the bridegroom himself, will know that it was him, Jesus provides the wine for the banquet, saving them from great embarrassment. His glory is revealed not with pomp and circumstance, not by hiding the worst of him from public view and displaying his best actions for public approval, but in the quiet miracle of provision for a wedding party. That is how Jesus wields power. The disciples see what happens, as do the servants, and we're told that they believe in Jesus. But what does that mean? What precisely have they seen him do? Is this simply an opening party trick to show off his control over the natural world? Or is something else going on here? Something that perhaps even the disciples could not yet have understood. So many of Jesus's miracles have explanations attached to them, albeit cryptic ones. Jesus heals the paralyzed man and proclaims his authority over the traditions of the Sabbath. Jesus walks on water and teaches his disciples to have faith. But if we're looking for the significance of this first miracle, then I think we find only a clue in his initial refusal to perform it. "Woman, what concern is that to you and me?" he tells his mother. "My hour has not yet come." My hour has not yet come. That phrase becomes a ticking clock throughout John's Gospel, counting down the days of Jesus' earthly ministry, which already in its opening act are numbered. Until round a table in an upper room, he will say to his disciples, "The hour is coming, indeed it has come, when you will be scattered." Until he will bow his head as he hangs on a cross and declare, "It is finished." Jesus' mother tells him that their hosts have run out of wine, and he responds by pointing out that the hour of his passion has not yet come. What does that mean? How is this hour when the wine runs dry like that hour when he will pour himself out upon the cross? If I may suggest an answer to these questions, I think it lies in the transformation of finitude, finiteness. The wine at the wedding feast gave out. They have no more to offer their guests. And Jesus transforms this lack into plenty. So too, we come to the cross having exhausted our capacity to save ourselves. We are mortal, we are finite. In time, we too run dry. And Jesus transforms that finitude into plenty. Into the plenty of the resurrection, new life, and life to the full. We run dry, but God pours himself out for us limitlessly, and in doing so gives us life richly to the fullest. The pouring out of new wine from water, the pouring out of his blood, which we represent with our wine at the communion table, both reveal the infinite capacity of God's new creation. The wine is running dry, and this is what is happening at the crucifixion as we bump hard against the limits of our human finitude, against the limits of our mortality. And if we are wise, we turn to Christ, who in his glory has the power to transform finitude into plenty. The old wine of the world transformed into the new wine with all its richness, life in all its fullness. Quietly, unspectacularly, Jesus transforms the finite into infinity, the ordinary into the ultimate. This is how he reveals his glory at Cana, and this is how he reveals his glory at Calvary, at the moment to which this first sign points. The ultimate act of self-emptying service, a crown of thorns and a brutal execution that brings resurrection to all. So what do these two approaches to power have to do with each other? Well, not a lot. Because whilst one would keep its eyes fixed on the ordinary wine, and on seeing the stores begin to run dry, sneak to drink out of other people's glasses, the other looks beyond to the new wine, puts its trust in the one whose glory is revealed in servanthood, and drinks life to the full. So we see at the other end of Christ's earthly ministry, his blood poured out like sweetest wine at the wedding feast of heaven and earth, where by his passion and resurrection we are joined in union with God. In the words of our offertory hymn, so celebrate with him today and drink the joy he offers you, that makes the simple moment shine and changes water into wine.